Coming to you from Music City, Nashville, Tennessee, this is the Quinn Spinn. Hey now, and welcome once again, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, one and all, to a brand new edition of... I was trying to make it to the 40-second mark up there, and I psyched myself out. The Quinn Spinn, that's the name of the show. I'm your host, the Quinn. At least that's how they know me on the interwebs in this context. And you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Anchor, Stitcher, YouTube, and more. And I'm back for another rousing and riveting installment of the official podcast of Underground Music Collective. You just heard Revel 9's All I've Become. That's been our opening theme song here at the Quinn Spinn since the great year of 2014, and it will be until the very end of days. And year 10 overdrive continues. There's a big 10 behind me that you may or may not be able to see that well, but it's there, trust me. And I have the honor of being joined by Kate Puckett, who is a phenomenally talented performer, artist, musician here in town, and I'm so glad we get to do this. Thanks for coming on.
Me too. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So we've got a lot to cover today about music, about life. You know, it'll be one of those episodes. And before we get into all of that, though, I want to give you a chance to properly introduce yourself. And I ask you the three standard questions I ask everybody that comes on the show. Those three questions are: who are you? What are your passions? And why on earth would you want to come on the Quinn Spinn?
My name is Kate Puckett. I'm a vocalist, producer, songwriter here in Nashville. Been here for about, 13 years now.
13 years.
So feeling a little bit closer to being a native than a outsider, but just love the podcast, love the show. A bunch of my friends have been on here, and it's just been so cool to listen to their stories on the podcast. So
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. So you're passionate about music. What are some other things that you enjoy here?
It's always such a tough question because music takes over.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Passionate about my family. I have a daughter now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a mom. Music takes up so much of my life.
Right. It's like, what else do I like?
Yeah. What else do I like? You know, family, music, God, you know, the three big ones.
Those are the big ones. Yeah. Yeah, that's true, though. It's like you get so wrapped up in it. It's like, wait, what did I do when I wasn't doing this?
Right.
What was there ever a time before I was completely enveloped in this? Yeah, no, I totally get it. I feel you on that one. Well, thank you for coming on. And of course, we'll have a chance to dive into all those things. But before we do that, I want to go back as far back as you want to go. We can go all the way back to the beginning if you want. And I want to know the formative experiences, people, places, of course, artists, but, just experiences overall that led you to a creative path and really made you want to pursue music.
Okay. I mean, I've been doing music since I was 11 years old, around the time I auditioned for the school play. Yeah. Didn't make it, didn't get any parts, super bummed about it. Told my mom, look, I want to do this. Can I have singing lessons?
Right.
So took singing lessons, was obsessed with it. Just all I wanted to do was sing. Started playing in, old folks' homes, retirement communities, community days, just anywhere I could get out that they could tolerate hearing me sing. That's what I was doing. Started a band, and we moved here as a band. My mom and my sister and I and the band in 2009 when I graduated high school. Mm-hmm. And we were climbing a little bit. We had some label interest, and it was actually a Christian band. And the band, of course, split up, as it always does, right before you hit your stride.
Right, right.
Went into doing the Broadway thing that everybody feels like they need to do at some point, country music.
Yep.
And that really wasn't my thing. So I started doing some vocal work off Music Row, just whoever needed work. I'd just go in, bring coffees to people and sing. And met some really cool people there. Played in a couple other bands, went from country to rock and roll to doing my own solo pop thing. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where I left off around 2020.
Yeah. And of course, 2020, we've talked about it plenty of times on the show, definitely had profound impacts on all of us, but we can dive into that a little bit. But yeah, the Broadway thing, like I have to give those people credit because it is a meat grinder. Like I know people who play triples, like 4 hours and 4 hours and instrumentalists. Like my buddy Spencer's a guitarist, and like he's done that. I think he still does it, you know, and he's gotten a lot of work and he is tremendously talented, but it's like, how do you play for 12 hours? How do you sing for 12 hours straight? Because I'm sure there are people who do that.
Yeah, the 4-hour sets, that's hard on your voice. Yeah. So I don't, props to the people who can do that. They must have vocal cords of steel because
that's hard.
I was tired after.
Yeah. So. And then multiple nights a week, like you're on your feet, like, out late. It is like much credit to those who like do that, and who do it for years because it's hard. It really is. I think Broadway in general, like is, it's a very demanding environment to work no matter what you do. You
have to have a passion for it. A very specific passion because it's not like anything else.
Yeah. You have to, I think, enjoy chaos a bit too, especially if you're like a bartender or a server down there.
Like, oh my gosh. Yeah. Props.
All the tourists who just like, who come here to not act right, all the power to you, Broadway folks. You are in our thoughts and prayers. But yeah, 2020, as you mentioned, kind of put a halt to a lot of things, for a lot of people in the industry. What was your experience like going through COVID and trying to navigate that?
That was a tough year, for everybody, obviously. It was, for me, in 2019, I was working with kind of like a development deal with some friends, and that kind of fell through right before 2020, and I found myself like on my own without a team. And so I was like, all right, 2020 is going to be my year. I'm going to, rebrand myself, sing the music that I want to sing, and take all of these things that I've learned in the past and like kind of put that together. And then, as 2020 happened, and that didn't happen. And then my mom was actually diagnosed with breast cancer in the beginning of 2020, and she was going through chemo, and it changed my priorities that year. I was spending a lot of time taking care of her and helping her with a lot of things. And we were at home, and I was like, this year is not what I thought it was going to be. So I'm going to take, do what I can with it.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I had always been interested in is, being a solo artist and working with different producers. I realized that I didn't know how to communicate what I wanted because I didn't know about production.
Yeah.
And so I'd hear a mix and be like, I want certain things from it, but I didn't know how to ask. And it would be, confusing for both parties.
Right.
Like, I'm sitting there like, I want more, whatever high end on my vocal. Like, what does that actually mean?
Right.
And so that was one of my goals in 2020. And being at home, it created the perfect scenario for me to just learn.
Yeah.
I had nothing but time to learn.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I spent pretty much all of 2020 locked in my bedroom learning how to produce, hours and hours and hours. And I produced my song, But Are You Happy? And released it.
I remember that one, yeah.
Yes. So I one-stopped that. I did the production, I wrote it, mixed it myself, and then actually had it mastered by Duncan Ferguson from the Voltage Exchange. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
it's amazing how, for everything that 2020 was or was not, and for everything it took away, like the opportunity it did give us to learn new skills like that, and to dive in and to go inward as well and like realize like what we wanted and how to ask for what we want. And I feel like, for me, like I'm still kind of on that journey where it's like, standing up and having your own voice and like, really trying to get what you want out of life and out of what you're doing. I think like, when the world is go, 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 before we had that chance to pause, it's just like going with the flow a lot of the time. But that was really the first opportunity collectively. I think we all had to like sit there and be like, whoa, what am I doing? Is this what I want to be doing? And if it's not, which I think a lot of people figured, there were definitely at least tweaks they wanted to make, like, what are those and how do I do it?
Right. It was very interesting because we have a society that, glorifies busyness and productivity so much and go, 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 hustle, hustle. But like we had this united, like forced stop. And it was like, suddenly everybody has nothing but time. So I think a lot of people were like, what do I do?
Yeah.
You know, and it really, I mean, it was difficult, but it was a blessing in disguise for, I think, a lot of us.
Yeah, there were definitely those silver linings, you know, and you could see them pretty early, like not right away. Like March and April that year were just like, what is happening? When can I leave the house? But then like, once you got more comfortable, you know, kind of being by yourself, you know, I think that was probably it for a lot of people. Like, you know, we're not used to just being by ourselves and having to go inward. Like, we live in a world with so many distractions, but like, once you got comfortable with that, it became, I think, a little easier to find those silver linings.
Yes.
You know, and figure out what to do with them. But, you know, it was a months-long process, years long, really. And I mean, we're still, I think, figuring that out, you know. And since then, you've also become a mom. So congratulations, first of all.
Like many in 2020.
But, I mean, that's, you know, a huge life change in itself, you know, in addition to everything else that's happened to this point in the decade, you know, and when you have a child or when you have a major life change, it does put everything else in perspective, you know, as far as like what you're juggling and how you're managing your time and like what you're able to give, you know. And so for you, what is the experience of becoming a mom? How has that affected things, you know, and how has that helped you kind of reframe or reprioritize the way you spend your time?
Well, it's interesting because I have always wanted to be a mom. And, you know, I always thought like in your plans, your best case scenario, you're like, okay, I'll make it big in music and then I'll start my family and I'll take the break, but I'll already have made it big. So, but, you know, I didn't, you know, end up making it. And I was like, you know, it's time this is what I want with my life. And it was sad that I felt like I had to choose like continue music or be a mom. And the beautiful thing is that I found that I didn't have to choose. You know, you don't just stop being a musician or creating once you become a mom. And it's definitely been interesting because learning how to find time it just looks different. And, you know, she's my main priority. You know, it's everything I do from the moment I wake up at, you know, 7 it's about her and taking care of her, giving her what she needs. And, you know, I have these little windows throughout the day while she's napping where it's like, okay, you know, this is my time to create. And then she'll go to bed and then I'll have that little window again. And
I'm sure it makes you more efficient in those windows. It's like,
it does.
I have 2 hours. Let's go.
Let's crank it out.
Yep. No scrolling. It's like, let's get the job done. Yeah.
It definitely teaches you like how important and precious time is, you know, those little windows and how to be productive in, you know, short amount of time.
Oh yeah. And, you know, we were talking about this before we started, but like, you know, and it's not the same thing, but I have 3 nieces and a nephew. And when I'm up there and I'm trying to work, first of all, when I go back to the Northeast, I'm the laziest person on earth because like I don't get to be here. And it's like, I want to spend time with the kids. I want to see this person, I want to see that person. But if I sit down and try to work, it's a half hour before, Gaga, can you get me a drink? Gaga, could you? It's just like, how do people do this? And I get to give them back, and then I get to leave for months at a time. Like, if you're a parent, there's no way, there's no separation, you know. So the time management you must develop in order to, and especially in this work from home culture, especially as an entrepreneur, as a musician, as an independent creative, like, it's otherworldly, like that ability, you know. I can't comprehend it myself right now. You know what I mean? Like I do. I'm like, how do people do that? You know, how do people, but I like the point you made too about like, you don't have to choose, you know, because that I think has been the biggest myth in our society is like, especially, you know, in our generation growing up, like we were taught like, follow the blueprint, you know, go to college, get the job, get married, get a house, have kids, and like, that's it. You know, you're done at 25. Like society says you're done. So you're done, right? And that's not true, you know? Like, I mean, I was telling you before, I started this at 26, which if you're playing this Quinn Spinn drinking game, I say that all the time, so go ahead, take a drink. But it's like, I started this late, you know what I mean? By conventional standards. And it's like, really what it comes down to is I think like this idea has just been created by society that like we have to be done by a certain point, or we have to have made it by a certain point, you know, and making it itself is abstract, you know. There's no point of arrival where it's like, I made it and I'm good forever. Like there's always, if you're a creative person, like there's always that next mountain you're going to want to climb,
Yeah.
you know, let alone things that you still feel you need to accomplish or levels of success to attain. Like there's always going to be that next thing, like that next itch to scratch.
Yeah.
And it doesn't stop because you're married, you have a kid, you have a house, whatever you have going on, there's always that voice inside of you,
Yeah.
you know, and if you don't listen to that voice, you know, it's going to eat at you and it's going to come out in other ways. And those ways I feel won't always be productive, you know, in other areas of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you said about like, you know, at 25, it's like almost like there's a deadline. Like I remember I was doing some background work and I was 21, 22 at the time.
Yeah.
And one of the writers that I was in there with, he's like, so how old are you? And I was like, oh, I'm 22. He's like, oh, good. You got a solid 6 or 7 years. And I was like, what does that mean? Like, that really stuck with me. And I was like, what happens in 6 or 7 years? Like, what happens at
You just
30?
fall into the void? Like...
Yeah, do I fall? Do I disappear? Like, do I just stop? Is it like a little countdown timer? And that really stuck with me for so long. And I dreaded getting older every year because I was like, okay, that's one less year I have to make it. And, you know, especially turning 30 was really hard because I felt like I was just in this like different, I don't know what the word is, but just different group of people all of a sudden. Like I wasn't one of the cool kids anymore.
Right. Yeah.
And it's been interesting to turn 30 and realize that like nothing has changed. I still have the same passions and if anything else, I am better now because at 30 I learned how to produce my own music. So it's definitely been eye-opening to learn that there's nothing to be afraid of.
Yeah. It's a beautiful place to come to it, especially like I'm going to be 36 in March. Once you hit your mid 30s and you just have no desire to be one of the cool kids anymore, then it's really freeing because it's like, I'm just going to create whatever I want.
Yeah.
And there we go. But, you know, for women in the industry too, there's a lot of pressure, you know, surrounding age. And like, I feel like a lot of that's breaking down. I mean, you had Lizzo who broke through in her 30s.
Yeah.
I think Sia too was 40, I think. When,
absolutely. Yeah.
When, what was it, Chandelier hit, I think. So like, you have these people, you know, now who are succeeding in the mainstream, in the mainstream consciousness, who prove that like you don't, like there's no time limit. You know, a friend of mine, good friend of the show, he's been on a couple times, Ty Warner, he always says, live your life and forget your age. And he's older than you and I. I don't know how old he is because he hasn't told me. He might have forgotten his age. But he's going for it now, you know, like Air Force vet, you know, has been, you know, in the professional world for a long time. He's like, I'm just going to go for it. See what happens. What do you have to lose, really? You know, and as long as you're keeping it in check with all of your other priorities in life, like you still have that opportunity to create, to play in that sandbox, and really make life what you want it to be.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm glad to hear and refreshed to hear that you're coming to this place of like, you know what, like I'm better now. You know, I'm even better than I've been, and like I can go forth and like add more to the conversation because what you get with that too is like the life experience, the wisdom, you know, we all have been like cut, stitched, and scarred a little bit by the time you get to your 30s, and you know what to look out for and like the types of energy that works with you and that like is additive to what you're trying to do and positive toward your life.
Right.
And I'm excited for you because I think like the 30s are a very underrated decade.
I totally agree.
You know,
I'm learning that very quickly.
Yeah, I love it. I like, honestly, like I wouldn't go back to my 20s for anything at this point.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I listened to what I was creating in my 20s and I'm like, thank God I didn't make it in my 20s. I'd be singing that forever.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there are episodes in the vault from this 10-year run from my 20s that'll never see the light of day. But it's like, but all those things are important. You know, they are in themselves are formative experiences. I think like another thing that gets lost in society is you don't stop having formative experiences when you graduate high school. You know what I mean? Like, there's all like everything that we do is part of this story, you know, and is, you know, if you're looking for the lessons in it and you're looking for the life experience to gain from it, like it's there for you. No matter how old you are, no matter what you're doing, you know, no matter where it comes from, like, you know, of course there's a lot from childhood that sticks with us and, you know, for a lot of us things that we end up having to work through later in life, but it's like there are always formative experiences and lessons around every corner, you know, especially looking at this as an entrepreneur, as an independent musician, creative, like life teaches you something every day.
Yeah.
You know, so,
absolutely.
So you've had a chance to kind of come to this station where you're starting to balance things out, you know, between motherhood, you know, career, all of that. What's one lesson that it's taught you that you would, you know, if somebody, you know, is in your shoes a few years ago, or kind of just starting out, embarking, kind of not sure which way to go, what to prioritize right now? Like, what's one lesson that has been invaluable to you that you would tell them?
This is going to sound so cliche, but really just if it was me, you know, 5-10 years ago, I just want to say, like, believe that you can do it. Like, production, that's something I'd always wanted to do, but like 10 years ago, I didn't have the confidence. Like,
Right.
I thought, you know, that's for other people to do. You know, I'd never be able to do that. I'll be, you know, paying a producer for the rest of my life. And I wish that I had started 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Just because I've fallen in love with it. And even if I just produce for the rest of my life, like, I would be so, you know, fulfilled from that. And I've really found a passion in that. And so definitely don't wait to start because you're afraid to start.
Right. Yeah, I mean, fear's a big thing. You know, we have a lot of resistance, you know, that comes up because like we're conditioned to fear these things, to fear taking these leaps, you know, to kind of stay inside the box. But it's only by taking the leaps that you're going to find out if you have a passion for it.
Yeah.
You're going to find out if you're good at it or could become good at it. And a lot of times, like, you can, you know, it's just a matter of you've got to put in the work. And like, sometimes you just have to get through the period of not knowing what you're doing to learn how to do it better, you know?
That's a hard period to be in, but it's worth it. Like, that's where you learn. So
yeah, it's scary, I think, you know, because of the judgment that is often associated with that.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like, the judgment doesn't matter, you know, like and when you come to the point of realization, it's like, you know what, I'm just going to try this. And when you find a point where you're not so concerned with what everyone around you is thinking or, you know, what they're looking at, you know, judgmentally, like, that gives you more freedom.
Absolutely.
You know, and it's one of the, you know, again, it's just one of those things that, like, you know, you come to our point of life and you start to that starts to click, you know, and it's a freeing thing, for sure. So, and certainly it's informing some of your creative direction forward.
Yeah.
So, already started releasing music here, this year, more to come. So tell us, what we can expect here in 2023.
I have a couple singles I'm working on. I don't have titles yet because I'm still deciding, like, do I want to put them all together on like an EP or an album or release them as singles, but I do have quite a few things I'm working on, and doing some work for other artists as a producer, which is super fun.
Picking up production clients now.
Yes,
congratulations.
which is helping to fund my own stuff, so that's been
amazing.
Super fun. So not something I ever thought that I'd be able to do, but it's been really cool.
Yeah. Getting out playing out at all, or?
I want to.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that's been especially hard as a mom.
Right.
Performing, you know, it's a lot of late nights. And,
yes.
You know, childcare is hard to come by.
Yeah.
And especially, you know, like, my mom is my main form of childcare, and she wants to be at my shows too to cheer me on.
Right.
So
yeah.
we've tried, you know, bringing my daughter to shows, and some environments are just not for a toddler. So,
yeah. Especially around here.
Yes. Like, definitely not anywhere, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Nashville's a really tough place, I think, to like do anything with kids.
It is.
There's like what around it? Like, you got the zoo, and like you got, like, you know, some other things here and there around town to like go see, but it's like, I don't know, you run out of those pretty quickly. Like, as far as like to bring kids to things, like, you're not bringing them down to Broadway. Certainly not after sundown.
No.
And definitely not on a weekend.
No.
Like, at least I wouldn't. I mean, whatever y'all do out there, go ahead. But like, yeah, it is tough, and especially as a musician, like, a lot of the gigs are late.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of them are in bars or, you know, places that, you know, have age restrictions, you know, 18 plus, 21 plus. So it's like, what do you do? You know? Yeah. So you just got to, I guess, find those opportunities where you can. And
yeah, I mean, I've learned to, you know, make a bigger production out of the few shows that I can play. So like, if I book a show, I'm just going to go big, like rent a nice venue, you know, bring a couple of artists in that I really love, and, you know, make something big out of it. And so it's more quality over quantity right now.
Right.
I'd like to get back into playing, I was playing every weekend at one point, but it just looks different now. So.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And the quantity over quality thing, or quality over quantity.
Mm-hmm.
Quality over quantity. That's what I meant. Quality over quantity means that, there's going to be more demand. So when you do play out, it's like, hey, you don't know the next time I'm playing out.
Yes.
So because I think too, like I see it all the time, especially with like younger bands and artists. It's like they're trying to play every writer's round. They're trying to play multiple times a week. And it's like, it oversaturates you because it's like, I could come to your show. If I don't come to your show on Tuesday, I could come to your show on Thursday.
Right.
And it's like, oh, well, then I could just come to the show next week too. It's like, there's not that demand, but you have the chance to like you said, go big and create something special. So like, it's another one of those things that like a different station in life brings you, is like the ability to get the most out of each experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think you see that too with like, nationally touring acts that have been around a long time. Like they're not going out on 3-month runs, you know? So it's like the demand's there. Like if they're coming through your town, you better see them, because it might be another 3, 4, 5 years before you get a chance, because they've got families and they've got like other business ventures, responsibilities at home.
That's so true. Yeah. That's a really good point that I never thought of. And it's almost like, too, when you are playing out every weekend, it's almost like you get your friends and family who are coming to your show, your fans can get like burnt out on seeing you, every weekend.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. So as far as the distant future, as far as your vision for, I hate to ask like the 5-year plan question, but like, what do you see down the road? Like as far as what you want to create, as far as legacy, as far as artistry, what kind of impact do you want to have long term?
I want to, touring is one of them. I'd love to bring my daughter out on the road and play some quality gigs, even if it's just like a couple week tour, or even if it's just weekend runs. Like I want to get out and be playing again. Mm-hmm. That, and I see a lot of artists that were me 10 years ago, and they're spending all their money on productions. They're learning just kind of who they are and how to navigate the industry. And I like, talking, especially young women. I love talking to them and like encouraging them to learn as much as they can about what they're doing and who they are, and learn about your craft. And that means the whole craft. Like learn a little bit about the mixing process, learn a little bit about how to book shows, learn as much as you can. So just encouraging other artists and just creating music. It's hard to know, what's going to happen in 5 years, but I know like it will involve me doing music in some capacity. I just don't see stopping as an option. Right.
Yeah. Like once you're entrenched, you're entrenched.
Yeah.
Like you do get to a certain point where it's like, and I say this kind of tongue in cheek, well, I'm stuck. So it's like, not like stuck, like I wish I could get out, but it's like, this is just what I do now. Like there's no way, like, there's a point of no turning back. I feel like, I mean, you could always, shift gears, but it's like, you get to a point where it's like, why would you,
Right.
Like, why would you want to do anything else? And you just like, are just committed to finding this way to make it work. I love what you said too about like helping people understand who they are, because that's so important to your artistry, I think, because I think another thing I see when artists come into town super young is they're super malleable, almost to a fault, where it's like, people are telling them, who they are and what they need to be and how to fit inside this box, right?
Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of people get burnt out on that.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, they do it for a couple of years, they try, and maybe they like have a little bit of like flash in the pan success, but then it goes away and it's like, who am I? I just spent all this money and I'm no further along, in terms of accolade, fame, money, whatever I was promised than I thought I'd be, than I was before. And a lot of people I think give up at that point, because it's just like, well, where do I go from here? Oh, well, it didn't work. I failed. So I'm going to go back home, or, I'm going to just go do something else, but so much of that I think comes from like not really having an understanding of who they are and what works for them, because again, like you're thinking early 20s, and it's like, you just got done being told where to be, who you are, what to do your entire life, unless you had amazing parents who didn't tell you to do any of that. But like, there's just a level of societal conditioning that I just think happens, like no matter what, none of us escape it. None of us are immune to it. So it's like you're coming in your early 20s and like, you still have so much more discovering to do about yourself.
Yeah.
And when you come to town and people are already just like sinking their teeth in, like, oh, well, you should do this because it worked for this person. Mm-hmm. Well, if it worked for that person, then it's going to have diminishing returns for you. Like you can be inspired and influenced by something, but make it your own, like I use this example all the time, like the boy bands of the 90s, like you had NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys, 1A and 1B, whoever's 1A and 1B depends on your preference. Right. But then from there, like they tried to copy that formula until they ran it into the ground and it was diminishing returns every time.
Yeah.
It's like, I see that a lot with like, so many people are like, influenced by Taylor Swift, which I mean Taylor's killing it, and like tremendous businesswoman. I mean what she's done to maintain and stay and grow where she is incredible.
It's incredible.
Like it's true, it truly goes to show like when you actually like apply yourself to like learning everything there is to learn about your industry and how to do it, like she's a perfect case study for that. But you had a lot of artists who grew up listening to Taylor Swift that like, would try to label themselves the next Taylor Swift in one way or another. And it's like, well, there's already a Taylor Swift.
Yes.
She's already there. And so it's like, what's your thing going to be? How are you going to stand out? How are you going to endear your story to your fans? Mm-hmm. But you have to know yourself to even know who your fans are.
Yeah.
Because then you're going to be able to genuinely connect and it's not just going to be casting so wide a net.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's tough to navigate. It's tough to know that when you're coming to town though, or when you're just starting out, you just want to make music and tour the world and
you're just saying yes to everything. I mean, every opportunity that comes by, you're like, I'll try this. I'll do anything it takes to, get to this next step in my career. And I rode that until I was, from 2009 to 2019, right before I started doing my own stuff, I was in that, pretty much every project that I was a part of, I was either singing other people's music on Broadway, or I was being molded by a label or an artist development or, a team telling me like, we see you as this, whatever, or we see you as this pop diva. And it just wasn't me, but I would, go with it, with all I had, because I was like, I want to make it. I'll do whatever it takes to make it.
Yeah.
And it got to the point like in 2018, 2019, where I realized, like if I do make it, this is the image that I'm going to have, for the rest of my career.
Right.
Until I, hit a level where I can do whatever I want to do.
Right.
But for the most part, like, you're creating something to fit a certain mold. And I just wasn't, I felt like just inauthentic. And I feel like that came across, not just on stage, but like, it just was obvious that wasn't who I was as a person or as an artist. I'd get home and write songs that weren't anything like what I was putting out.
Right.
And it got to the point where I was like, that's what I wrote, but are you happy about?
Right.
And, about somebody who goes with it and at the end of their life, they're like, am I actually happy? I wish I would have done things differently.
Yeah.
And it was definitely a wake-up call. But that song was telling the story of that.
Yeah. And that say yes to everything mentality, like, there's a benefit to it, I think, in the beginning to a degree where it's you're trying to build relationships, you're trying to forge your path, right? But then you learn, as you did, like I've had this experience too, that like not every opportunity you're saying yes to is right for you, with UMC, like when we came to town, it was like, yes, we'll be a media partner and I'll do all this free work for everyone just to get our name out there, and like, it's interesting because like, as the platform's grown and I've gotten a little wiser and even burned by that a couple of times, it's like, I still notice sometimes people coming back around still expecting the same thing. It's like, this is a different game now, because like, I've drilled down what I want UMC to be, and it's like, does this even work? Are we doing something similar? And is like supporting this other thing, putting all this time investment into it, like, is that going to take away from what we're trying to build? Like, at the end of the day, like, I think in the beginning you have to say yes to everything for a short period to understand what to say no to.
That's true.
But then you've got to start saying no, and you've got to start setting those boundaries, because that's when people get swallowed up, when it's like, you don't start saying no. You're afraid if you say no, it's going to cost you this, this, and this down the line. at the end of the day, like, it is a small industry, and, you always want to handle things in a diplomatic way, but you don't have to say yes to everything.
Yes.
And there's what's right for you. And, like, whoever's going to pick up what you're putting down ultimately is going to do it, so you'd rather have that connection be authentic with your platform than just, have it be quote for everybody.
Yes.
At the end of the day. Because, like, your true fans are the ones that are going to stick with you through thick and thin.
Yeah.
And who connect with you on some level that's not just a sound or an image, but like connect with you on a personal level.
Right. Yeah. And they can tell when something's authentic. People, they want to connect with another person. They don't want to connect with a certain image that isn't real or a certain brand. They want to connect with another human. And that's, as artists, I think even we forget that sometimes. It's easy to look at like other artists and other brands and be like, I want to be this brand. But it's like, is that even something like, I was putting out so much energy just to maintain a certain brand, and if I'm having to put out that much energy to like act and look and dress a certain way, like, is it really me?
Right.
And I got burnt out so quick.
Yeah, and it will burn you out, and like you said, people can tell. People can tell when it's real, or when it's just manufactured. And I think in this age of, I think we're heading more toward an age of transparency on social media too.
Yeah.
In the digital space where people are, I think, more invited, particularly after COVID, to show up as their real selves.
Yeah.
Because we all saw everybody in their sweatpants on Zoom for months or years at a time. So it's like, there's really no hiding. Like, I feel like that super manufactured image, like, people just don't buy it anymore.
They don't.
I don't. Like, honestly, I'm just going to say this, if I see one more aspiring country artist posing in front of the Wings, I'm going to lose my mind. Everybody's done that. It's been done. Yeah. It's not setting you apart, and it's just, I've gone on this rant before too, like the first name, middle name thing. Well, you're just branding yourself like everybody else because somebody told you to do it or you saw other people doing it. Like, find what's you and put that forth, but would I have done the same thing 10 years ago that everyone else is doing? Probably.
Yep.
Because, like, who knew? Like, who knew better? It's just like, oh, well, that seems to be working for them. Like, I guess it'll work for me. I don't know what else to do. You're coming from a place of inexperience, so you're just kind of doing what you've seen work.
Right.
But over time, it gives you that insight as to, okay, I've seen it work, but will it work for me?
Right.
And will it work for what I'm trying to put out? And it's, a lot of time, it takes a deeper level of digging inward to find the answer to that.
It does. And I'd wish that I had somebody, saying exactly that to me 10 years ago, because I would have saved myself a lot of like floundering, trying to figure out what works for me. And for sure. Yeah,
I'm definitely going to make a clickbait title out of this. If you're a musician in your early 20s, watch this in all caps. It'll be like, the thumbnail will be like, one of the shocked face, like, bombshell, like, oh, this is clickbait, so I'm going to click it now. And, oh, yeah, that's actually a good point. Like, let's save some people some time and energy on their journeys.
Save 10 years on your career by these 3 steps.
Yep. By these 3 steps, all caps, buy my ebook, take my course, whatever. I do have a course. It's called Perfect Your Pitch, and it covers a lot of these things, actually. Here I am shilling products now, but I don't have an ebook yet. So this has been fantastic, Kate. Thank you so much for coming on. I hope to do this again. Looking forward to what's to come for you, and we'll definitely see you down the road back here on the show anytime. Before we wrap up, where can people learn more about you online?
You can find me on Instagram at Kate Puckett Music. My TikTok is just videos of my kids. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, then you can find me on TikTok, Kate Puckett Music. Spotify, Kate Puckett. I think that's everything. Just across all socials, Kate Puckett Music or Kate Puckett Songs.
All right. Make sure you check out Kate. Thanks so much again for coming on.
Thank you.
Absolutely. This has been the Quinn Spinn, 2 N's and Quinn, 2 N's and Spin. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Anchor, Stitcher, YouTube, and more. Also learn more about the show on Instagram at Quinn Spinn Official. We're on Facebook and Twitter too, but I don't really push those as much because really, who does anymore? And I still refuse to get a TikTok for anything, although I do have a personal one that I haven't logged into in months. Also, learn more about the show at undergroundmusiccollective.com. That's our central hub for all things independent music, creativity, community, and more. Lots of cool stuff coming up this year that will continue to come up. We're just hitting you with a barrage of epic things that we're doing here this year. We are all in on 2023. Learn more about UMC on all the socials and all the things we're doing. That's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, of course, the Spotify. The Spotify. The UMC 20 playlist is what I meant to say. That's updated every single week with 20 fresh tracks in the latest episode of this podcast, whether I botch the outro or not. NashLive.live. We've got plenty of shows coming up. Make sure you check those out. Lots happening throughout the year, including in September. We're going to be doing a little 10-year anniversary show for this podcast at Cobra. So that's September 8th, which is 10 years to the day of episode 1. Very excited for that. Plenty more fun. My grammar's atrocious in this outro. To come throughout the year. I'm going to leave now. Revel 9's All I've Become is going to take us out just like it brought us in. And I'll see you next time. Hey now.